in the first reading we have the two extremes, those who go through life and leave a trace on the page of history, and then those who go by and leave no trace and disappear as though they had never been. This latter could have been the case of Boniface. He entered, actually very, very young, as a child, into the holy protection of the local monastery in Exeter, and from a alumnus, a student, a pupil, naturally entered then as a postulant and novice. And he could have stopped there, quietly doing the work commanded by obedience. In that situation, it would have been the copying of manuscripts and the like. But no, after some years of that quiet life, something inside him moved him. And that I would leave with you. It is important to pick up these nudges. It is important to let the Lord be Lord of time. If the Lord is not Lord of all, he is not Lord at all. And so that element of prayer has to be there, that he is Lord. Once we are in prayer mode, the bottom line is, Lord, what will you have me to do? And he himself can be the prime mover in that. One can sometimes feel a niggling, it won't go away. There is something knocking at the door, and it becomes more clear and more specific. And then the signature of God comes in the form of also his arm of providence, e.g. bumping into somebody, which on the human level might be a coincidence, but is a genuine God incidence and contains dynamite for things to happen. Now here we have bumping of another sort, because what actually happens is this. With permission, Boniface goes over, far away from the British Isles, and penetrates into pagan lands. He is having some success, and word gets to the Supreme Pontiff, Gregory II, and they encounter each other. He is made bishop and is commissioned by pontifical authority to evangelize these areas, Franconia, Bavaria, Frisia. And on he goes, and he has collaborators. He is a good and attractive personality, and the warmth of that personality, like a magnet, draws, and so he's not alone after a while. And then, being a monk, the instinct is also to found, and one of the greatest monasteries of history, Fulda, on an island, was founded by him. Eventually, he moved on, and it was in the Frisian area that he was unexpectedly martyred by unconverted pagans, and so it ended there. He was placed in the monastery founded by him, where his body still is, and that still acts as a magnet. That is where the German bishops meet in their episcopal conference, and therefore there is a physical link with their origin. The other extreme of the Benedictine life will be found in someone who lived not far away from him in time and geography. His name was Bede, and we had his feast the other day, the 25th of May. He did not move. He was there in Jarrow, and he was the model of those who opt for just keeping their hood up and disappearing in God, but working with one part of their body which can move the world long after they've gone. I'm talking about the pen. And in those silent cloisters, the scriptoria were noisy for all eternity. They kept learning from pre-Christian times, and they certainly kept the Christian culture alive, even when in Europe they were going into a dark age. Here in the far west, we kept it burning because we weren't quite so attacked as they were. And so, we have these two models that I would propose to you. For it is often in life not either or, but both and. And what is common to these two extremes of the Benedictine life is the fact that God was the prime mover, and that whatever was happening in God and in an unhurried calm. One of the illnesses of our modern life is that people are almost twitching with agitation. They're always so used to be bombarded unexpectedly by some message or many messages all at once that they're not in that calm mode. They are deeply disturbed. They are actually profoundly damaged in their psychology unless they know how to react against what's coming at them. Very few people realize the damage done to the soul by the simple act of turning a knob which lets in other people's words. It's an unconscious choice which has huge power for damage. Because then we are not free. Our mind is attached to someone else's mind, and there's too much coming in for us to think of God. Because the contemplative life has its rules, rather like in training in the gym. One can't have shortcuts. One can't learn music without learning scales. One can't learn languages without studying grammar. And so what has worked always will work, and one can't have these shortcuts. As though, for instance, in immediate charismatic success, we can have that, as it were, access to divine power without doing the preparatory work. And what is that work? It is never switching off from that mode which I would propose to you on this day of St. Boniface, because I am quite convinced that all the efficacy of his work was grounded in the fact that he was not the worker. He was the collaborator, and he was picking up first what the Lord was hinting that he should do, and never doing two things at once. One does one thing as it is presented to us by divine providence, and the rest, when time comes, will be done well, because that is one of the things that damages us too. We don't know how to handle worry, which is actually a self-defense mechanism. But gone wild, it becomes that attention draw itself and ruins all else because it's in the center of our mind and we can't think of God. So that mode of receiving life is a secret to be retained. One is not in charge of events, and if one learns that trick of accepting life in that spirit of adoring the divine will, it gives us freedom. And again, one of the great damages done to the modern soul is that people think they are almighty over events. So, I leave you with that. There are, however, in the spiritual life, other things, not just interior inspirations and providential bumpings, but there are genuine divine interventions which we too want to pick up. I hear a lot of reports of unexpected answer to prayer. Indeed, only yesterday I got a long phone call from Italy. Don Mark is a young priest who used to come to our monastery when he was still a seminarian, and I was with him at his ordination and first mass. Actually talked about his celibate, and we've always been in touch. He still comes to me for his retreat, and basically what happened was this. Out of the blue, he was shot through with a terrible, terrible disease, meningitis, and they had abandoned all hope. He was rushed to hospital and he was completely unconscious. There was no reaction whatsoever. He was in a coma for, I think, weeks, if not months. I'm not sure. Basically, all hope was abandoned and the medical staff left that to be understood. But then what? All the prayer groups, all the monasteries, all the priest friends in the area, it's a big area, Brescia, dense with faith, got together and bombarded mercilessly heaven until he woke up. And out of all impossibility of contact, he started to stir and move. And for weeks and weeks and weeks, he was finding movement again. For a long, long time, he was what he called a cold bit of marble. I actually suggested to him that he should make a career in the Vatican as a statue. And by now, he's been allowed to go home, and he's able to talk and walk a bit with difficulty, but he's got to, for 6 months, exercise violently until he gets all the use back. But that was one of many, many, many testimonies that come to me all the time of what's going on when seriously we plug into the power that we have and don't take seriously. Because that's also the third bit I would leave with you. Boniface dared, and God respected his daring.